Welcome to the Center for Transformation Institute podcast, where we are uniting with therapists everywhere for personal and professional growth. Your journey starts here at the place therapists grow.
Hello, Bobby. It's good to be with you today.
Good to be with you today, Monica, as well.
Yeah, so you and I got connected last June. We were friends on LinkedIn. We were connected there, and then we reached out to one another knowing that we both were a part of this greater life model community, therapists who love the life model. So it was man, is that about 6-7 months now that I've been acquainted with you?
Yeah, about 6 months now.
Yeah. And I remember that night that we talked, I was at my daughter's swim meet, and I think you were headed into a swim meet that night as well.
Yeah, my boy had a swim meet that evening as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's so funny. So it was kind of a loud conversation, but I wanted to loop back in with you today because as we are honing in on this life model informed therapist training curriculum, I'm wanting to get feedback from therapists like yourself who have been connected to the model for a while and who have maybe a unique perspective based on what you've experienced personally with the model, but also what you have been able to how you've been able to access the model with your clients and what you've seen happen in terms of that. So can you just, for the sake of this conversation, talk about how you came to know the model? Like, how did you get connected to Life Model? How did you learn about it? And what was that initial experience like for you?
I was introduced to it through church in a Joy Start Care group. I saw a life group, talked about joy, had no idea where it was going to go or what it was about, but was definitely intrigued, got involved with the group. The leader of that group now has her own ministry associated with Thrive and Life Model. She's actually rewriting the Thrive materials and curriculum for a different context. So she's been familiar with it for over a decade and very helpful. As I went through the Joy Starts Here group, which was an online group due to COVID, as we got deeper and deeper into it, what I recognized for me, I've got a pretty heavy spiritual formation background. Academically, it's been a passion of mine for about 4 decades. And in getting more and more familiarized with what Joy Start Here propagated and then being more deeply introduced in the life model, I began to see that that was like a puzzle piece that I'd been missing that helped me make sense of all the other puzzle pieces. And that was the integration of the neuroscience along with a lot of what Dr. Wilder especially had done in terms of biblical theology and that background. And I also was intrigued with it from the standpoint of it makes sense to me that whatever is truly going to work and help us grow and mature is going to work whether we're in the U.S. or any other country in the world. A brain here is similar to a brain in Africa, to a brain in Europe, a brain in Asia. So that was very helpful for me. The other piece that I found with it as I got deeper in is it to me provided a roadmap that I could use with clients. I could assess maybe where holes were and help them fill in those holes to be moving them forward in order that they are able to find solutions, find healthy, transformative solutions for whatever the issues are that they're bringing in, whether that's marital issues, relational issues, work issues, addiction issues. It gave me a container, or it had given me a container space from which to be able to work out of.
Yeah, as you're saying all of this, I'm thinking about a couple things, Bobby. I'm thinking about the moment that I connected to the book, Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You, my first introduction to the life model. I was in ministry, right? So doing discipleship with my husband as he was senior pastoring. And then also as a professional counselor, doing this work with Christian and non-Christian clients. And when I came across the model, I felt like this nexus of my two worlds merged. I don't know if you felt that as well.
Most definitely. I think the initial lead in for me was just what I was recognizing in myself personally and the holes that I saw there, and then being able to get more exposure and reading a lot more materials, books, listening to the webinars, podcasts, things of that sort, and being able to see, oh, this is how I can pull this into sessions with clients. And so what started out for me personally and maybe say family wise, then really kind of became more client centric.
Ah, got it. Yes, exactly. I think that that's a beautiful aspect of the model, is that as we're transformed, we can then offer those tools to others. And I love it that it's not contradictory to the word of God at all. It just accents what we know about the word and the mysteries of knowing the Lord. And it kind of pulls us into understanding how to unlock some of this joyful existence that God promises in the word, right? And so I'm also thinking about, as you're talking just about Dallas Willard and his theological perspectives that are so evident throughout the model. Even in that book Renovated, I'm sure you've been into his perspectives with the background that you have.
Most definitely. I first read, well, back in seminary 30 years ago, we had to read Hearing God for one of our classes. But I was introduced to the Divine Conspiracy about 25 years ago. And when I read it, that book rocked my world probably more than any other book than, say, Tozer's Originally Pursuit of God, very early in my Christian journey. And so a lot of my background before I came to Life Model was through a lot of Dr. Willard's writings and seeing him speak at different places. And then his bridge with Dr. Wilder and with Kitty Wilder. And then also his wife working with Dr. Wilder at Shepherd's House really opened up things for me, and it's given me different lenses to view things through, but also to be able to integrate and take Dallas's ideas on curriculum for Christ-likeness, and then also view, okay, well, how can we do that in ways that are truly transformative and stick with the different skills and tools we have on the neuroscience side through Life Model Thrive.
Yes. I'm very connected to what you're saying, in that the integration of, Wilder coming out of his work at Fuller and going into the practice where Jane Willard was, and then the connection with bringing Jesus into the counseling room and her mentoring really of him, the influence that she had, and then him coming across Alan Shore's work, and then being able to connect with Dallas Willard at the end of his life. And the way I think of it, based on the readings, is just that Wilder was able to bring something to Dallas Willard about that attachment to God in the discipleship process being essential to really see the breakthroughs. That if we're going to be Christians who are spontaneously loving our enemies, that it's going to be because we're attached to God in that part of the brain. And I think Dallas said that that's the thing that was missing in that whole spiritual formation process, that people had been doing, so much in terms of spiritual disciplines and still not seeing that automatic transition into spontaneously loving enemies.
Well, and I know, 20, 25 years ago, Dallas was noted that Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You, he felt was the best book on Christian counseling there was from his perspective.
Wow. Okay.
So that was on his recommended reading list.
Yes. Wow. That's amazing. I love that. I love that. And I agree. I mean, the first time I read it, and I was just looking through it the other day, and I'm thinking, wow, this is so chock full of very unique and insightful perspectives. And it really gives us, as professional therapists who are Christian, a lens to see how to connect with clients that's different than what we learned in grad school. At grad school, it's all about these strict boundaries, almost fear-based boundaries that didn't ever feel helpful to me as a therapist. I always felt like I was doing something wrong in terms of feeling connected to my clients in terms of loving them as Christ does. And almost like my professional program wouldn't have thought that was appropriate. So yeah, I think it's wonderful to have this collaboration or to fellowship with you like this, Bobby. What I'd like to do is kind of transition the questioning a little bit into more specifically what you think is special about the model, what's unique in terms of what you've been able to access. There's, the model is very rich. There's a lot to it, but in terms of what you've accessed and how you've been able to utilize it in your personal life, how would you identify the model as something special or unique? What would you tell a therapist who didn't know anything about it, basically?
For me, the most helpful piece has been the developmental component of it.
Okay.
I was trained, those that I was trained by were more Ericksonian in their approach, which is great. But with the life model and the brain maturity assessment that they put together, the 5 stages, which they both saw biblically, and then also saw how that overlaid with what they were finding in the neuroscience. Those 5 stages to me are extremely helpful, both for myself personally, and then I also use that as an anchor point with clients to kind of assess, okay, we've got this issue going on, but where are the holes that they're struggling with that we can be working on? We can use Thrive tools for that, and other components as well, narrative work or whatever that might be, to help them be working on those in order that we can begin seeing pretty significant shifts quickly. Not that the therapeutic process is quickly, but a lot of my background training has been by those that are anchored in reality therapy and brief solution, short-term solution oriented. I see that you can use it with whatever you want, whichever modality you'd like. But for me, it's been really easy to interlay those because I see that brain maturity assessment as a GPS.
Yes.
The way I'll often describe it to clients when we're talking about just the breakdown that's so central in Thrive and Life model and what's taught in terms of fear versus joy in the brain, and what's going to run on one of 2 fuels. That assessment to me provides both the GPS, but then also the tools along the way that become the fuel for that journey to wherever they're heading in their own maturity.
Right.
And it works that way for me too. I'll go back and I'll usually take that assessment somewhere between 2 and 4 times a year.
Okay.
Reassess and see where the holes are getting filled in for me. And then also, okay, here's my next set of 3 or 4 that I'm going to be focusing on maybe for the next 3 to 4 months.
Yes. That's so similar to what I've been doing. And you and I have never talked about that. So that's amazing. I agree that the maturity checklist seems like a big picture conceptualization that you can pull into any modality, right? And that as you're working with yourself, the Holy Spirit, or you're working with clients or groups, you can utilize that checklist in very helpful ways. Although the first time I ever looked at the checklist, I think I was very confused by the language. I didn't really understand. It took me studying it and coming into deeper places of self-awareness myself to even understand what some of the concepts were. And so I think that may be one of the best offerings that Wilder has given us, is that checklist. And when it comes to the developmental piece, of course, we have Erickson, and we have other theorists who offer us explanations, but to bring in the Christian component, the biblical Christianity component, is very unique and so helpful for us as believers to take it all in terms of our connection, our relationship with the Lord.
I very much agree.
Yeah.
That's been my experience as well.
Yes. So good. So good. So just a final question here in this conversation that we're having. If you were to say something to a therapist who's never heard about the model, or who'd only read like one book, or, is very beginning, just maybe even just listening to what you're saying here today for the first time, what would you tell them about the importance of this journey for them as a therapist?
And this journey being the life model Thrive?
Yeah, the journey of getting connected in the life model, understanding it.
I just see that it really, I think a lot of it for me just comes out of what I've seen happen in clients' lives. It wasn't that things weren't happening before, but it has given me really tangible tools and ways of thinking. And so being exposed to the life model can give us a different filter that, as you just said, can integrate with anything. You can take your modality, you can integrate it in with whatever modality or modalities you feel most comfortable with.
Yes.
But it to me, it like pulls back the veil, and we can see what needs to be going on.
Right.
For instance, in our clients' brains, which obviously carries over to their relationships. And then you mentioned attachment and healthy attachment, and that is interwoven in the whole. It is interwoven throughout the life model and the Thrive materials in ways that, to me, just made it a lot more accessible for me.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so it's what I hear you saying, Bobby, is it's a lot about clarity, right? Like when we're walking through this life as believers, we've had experience with the Holy Spirit. We believe that Jesus is the Son of God and died on the cross for our salvation, and we know we're psychological beings who have developmental traumas, things that have impacted our development. And when we pull in the life model and we start to understand the foundational aspects of it, we just have more clarity, and we can participate with our clients more when we've done the journey of the model as well, or doing it. We have more to offer in terms of wholeness, personal wholeness ourselves, and then we're able to then offer our clients more of a roadmap that's more clear. There's more clarity for wholeness and for truly getting to a place in our lives where we have a life-giving joy and peace experience that is, man, there's nothing like it. It is the most important aspect of life, is to get to a place of experiencing joy and peace. So great conversation here today. Thank you so much, Bobby. So
Thank you.
think, yeah. So I know you and I are going to continue to have great conversations, but I really appreciate you just getting these questions answered today, as our institute is trying to help therapists who don't know the model or know a little bit about the model to really understand the profound nature. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Place Therapists Grow. We hope you will join us next Monday. To expand your knowledge and continue your growth journey, go to cftinstitute.com and take our assessment. See you next time.